Last week we took a look at the new Sapphire Nitro Plus AIO, and it's really quite a stunning looker. And what if you got something like that and yeah, it looked cool, but then you found out that the thermal performance wasn't quite where you wanted it to be? Well, one thing you can do is just get some new fans. Welcome to Machines and More. We started the discussion about 120mm fans about a year ago, and this is that round 2. We're going to take a look and retest mostly new fans that were released this year. Now, I'm going to throw one wild card in there that I haven't tested before in the EK Vardar Evo 120ER, but the other ones in this grouping will be ones that we haven't taken a look at before, and we'll be doing the testing with that Sapphire AIO. But that unit is representative of your average AIO and an attached radiator on the market. It's an Asetek Gen 7 pump unit, and this will give us a good platform to test on. These included fans are far from throwaway. I mean, who doesn't want a robot face on their AIO, right? But if you're like me, you might want a better fan for the noise characteristics or just to get more performance. For the fans today, let's revisit the Scythe Wonder Snail from earlier in the year, the new Fantex T30, the Noctua Nfa 12x25 in Chromax, and Arctic P12a Rgb. And I'm going to do a quick test with that EK Vardar Evo also, since they are quite commonly used in custom cooling applications. This round of testing will be more of a fact-finding mission. I mean, we mostly know where these fans will rank in terms of their performance characteristics based on prior testing, but a lot of that testing was done with a high thermal load, so what I wanted to do was throw in more of an applicable middle-of-the-road chip in a Ryzen 7, as well as test it within the confines, the real-world limitations of a case, to get a more applicable recommendation for most of you, and at the same time drill down to what makes more sense considering budget constraints. So let's go through the lineup real quick, and then we'll jump right into the testing results. First up, we've got the Arctic P12a Rgb. This is the ARGB version of a fan favorite P12 from Arctic, and this is $17 or about $43 for the 3-pack. A lot cheaper that way. This one has got daisy chain cables for your fan and your RGB, so if you have multiple ones, that's very convenient. Small rubber pads on the frame, 0 to 2000 RPM, and it has a 0 RPM mode, which means that the fan will go all the way down to not spinning at all when that PWM signal is low enough. Next up is the Scythe Wonder Snail. This is the one they recommended to me for a liquid cooling application. Big rubber bumpers. It's 300 to 2400 RPM. Simple, really no nonsense black fan for about $17. Curved blades in this whirl, which is I think where it gets its Snail name for. And this one tested pretty well on a custom loop previously. EK's Vardar Evo 120ER is a popular model from the Slovenian liquid cooling specialist. Now, this is the RGB version of their 120ER. It's a 4-pin RGB model, 500 to 2200 RPM, but this one can also go down to 0 RPM, provided the signal you give is low enough, it'll just shut off. This one doesn't have any bumpers in the corners, and this one usually runs for about 26 to 28 bucks, depending on the retailer. Noctua released their Chromax Nfa 12x25 not too long ago. It's not a carbon copy of the tan and brown. There is a small difference. For example, the center hub is hollow compared to the original, but the performance tests out pretty similarly, and it comes with color bumpers and a few special fan accessories like a radiator gasket. $33 is the asking price MSRP, and it's one of the best fans out there right now. There is a version of the A12x25s that has a 0 RPM mode, but this one is not it. 450 to 2000 is the range here. Lastly, the one of these fans is not like the others model. This is the 30mm thick T30. It's a pretty advanced fan with a mode switch in the back that lets you toggle between the different RPM zones. One can go all the way down to 0 RPM if you want, and you can also go into advanced, which gets you to 3000 RPM, but we'll limit the testing to the normal mode today. It's got a daisy chain cable and small bumpers in the corners. These can be had for $31 technically, but when inventory was tight, there were some higher figures floating around there. But I think prices have mostly stabilized around that number. So let's get into the performance discussion. I'm not going to test every single noise level out there, but let's hone in on +1 and +3 dBA from the noise floor, and that higher level represents the ceiling that I usually set for your moderately hot chips, because I think at that point you're just before diminishing returns sets in terms of the noise to performance trade-off. Noise normalization allows us to hone in on the thermal performance by comparing the fans at the RPMs that yield the same noise level, and that's the benchmark that we're going to use in order to see which fans work better. And here I retested everything. In a case, the noise characteristics as measured in on a decibel meter can in fact be different than when you're measuring in open air, but generally speaking there's no major changes here. At +1 decibel, there is mostly no surprise here in terms of the ranking. We know the T30 is the best 120mm fan. In open air, it could run a little bit faster than the Noctua at the same noise level, but in the case, perhaps due to turbulence, it ran a little bit slower here. Now, one thing that happens, such as in the NR200, is due to the thickness. As it gets closer to the PSU cage and the motherboard, well, the airflow gets more limited, and that is one real-world airflow variable there, especially when your rad is thicker. Still, though, it is the best performer with the Nfa 12x25 Chromax close behind, and the Vardar does bring up the rear here. Now, it's better than the stock fans, but really not that much better. At +3 decibels, mostly the same order. The T30 and the Nfa 12x25 Chromax are still the front of the pack, with the other three really close. One thing you might pay attention to, though, is how much headroom is left. For those of you with hotter ambient temps or super hot CPUs, you might want to have some cushion. And between those three, the P12 has only a little bit left. It's already at 87%. So if we just test the fans out to get their all-out performance at 100%, and here I'll also give you the tested noise levels. The T30 and the Vardar are at the top, and they're pretty good, but the T30 is way quieter, as you can see. All these fans mostly get to that same level, but the Vardar and Snail do have to run really fast, and as a result louder. The Nfa 12x25 and T30 are still top of the charts in the sense that they are able to combine good thermal performance with lower noise. The P12 runs hottest, but it's only at 1800 RPM and really still quite tolerable in terms of the noise. I'll note I did not test the T30 with the advanced mode because I don't think that 2000 to 3000 range is applicable. It's just something that most users shouldn't be using. Yeah, it's there, but it's really too much noise for too little gain. And if you really need that much fan speed, I would suggest looking at extra fans and a bigger rad instead. To round out the discussion, let's take a quick listen to the fans at the measured levels. So our fact-finding mission here, well, for your moderate high TDP CPU, well, the spread at the middle RPM level, it's about 1 degree. And for some of you, that might be huge. For some of you, that's a measurement error. So which fan should you get first? Well, I think we can rule one of them out first, and that's this guy here, the Vardar Evo. It performs decently, but it's actually priced quite high, right? And if you wanted RGB, you know, the RGB on the P12 is actually going to yield more options because it's ARGB. And for performance, the Snail basically works the same, but it costs a lot less. So unless you're an EK fan through and through, I think this one would be a tough one to recommend. And unfortunately, in general, that's been the case with a lot of EK fans that I've looked at. They're not bad fans, they're decent, but there are often better options. Between the Snail and the P12a Rgb, well, these cost the same, but the P12 has ARGB. The Wonder Snail has a higher RPM range, at a noise penalty of course. Overall though, I think for 95% of folks swapping 120mm fans for their AIO, the P12a Rgb is the one to get. It's got the daisy chain cables. You can get them even cheaper in 3-pack form. So if you have a 360mm rad or you have a 240 and you can use that extra case fan, well, this is a great looking fan at a very attractive price. For a high-end option, it's down to these two, right? The T30 and the A12x25. Well, you knew that already. But diminishing returns, right? It's quite a premium to pay for fractions of a degree, but if you want it, you pony up for it. We knew these were good, but ultimately only you can decide if it's worth it. The T30 is thicker. If you have space, it's quite a good use of an extra 5mm though. The noise pattern at the higher RPMs to the ear, it does seem to be a little bit higher frequency than the NFA 12x25 though. But overall, this one is a better performer with a neat mode switch and that daisy chain cable. I have run both of these in a lot of test builds so far, but if I could only choose a single one, it'd be this one. And whether it's in Chromax form or not, I really like both of these fans, but one thing I've concluded on from my recent SFF test builds is that with the T30s, I usually have to plan the build around the thickness of the fans, and that's never the case with the Noctuas. For some reason, that 5mm, it always gets you to the edge, and with the Noctuas, I don't have to think twice, and I think that versatility is worth something. And as you've seen from the test results, yes, there is a difference, but in a typical real-world SFF scenario, that figure is perhaps not meaningful enough to deal with the extra space constraints. If you're getting better fans, but then you're limiting your airflow because this fan's too thick and you're choking it off, well, that's no good, right? But the good thing is we can absolutely choose the best one for the task at hand because both of these are available. So choose the one that works for your build. So there you have it. I hope you found this helpful. This won't be the last comparison of this type, and we'll add new ones as they come along, so please go ahead and subscribe. I'm curious what you think too, so comment down below and let me know which one you would go with. Links are down below for the fans. Give a like, and thanks for watching.